Okay, we are recording. Ed, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much, Stu, for having me on.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure, mate. Where are you today? It looks very studio based.
I'm in my home studio just north of Hitchin. Yeah, kind of getting on with writing music. And what I do.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, it seems weird to kind of look back to something that I guess will probably be a distant memory for that most people wish it would be anyway. But tell me a little bit about lockdown and how you found that creatively.
Creatively, it started out okay, and then it dwindled. If you know
Okay,
what I mean. I think I had that initial sort of burst of, well, hey, I can get on and write stuff. I've got all this time. But then I think I don't know what stopped it, to be honest. Maybe it was just the monotony of having nothing to do but be at home.
yeah,
And also like bouncing off other people. It's one thing kind of, sending emails to each other or exchanging music via email, but like having someone in the room with you is entirely different. And that's something that I really cherish. Like as far as, writing music, we still try and do that as much as we can, basically.
did you feel a sort of almost like a knee jerk reaction to right? Okay, so all of a sudden there's none of the pressures that present themselves daily to a musician. I have the time to create more, so I should max that. Did you just from speaking to other musicians, there felt that kind of, well, I've got the time, so I've got to maximize it, and you can't necessarily force these things, right?
100%. But I think I find it hard enough writing music as it is. To be honest with you, it's like it's still I still have that pressure on my shoulders, regardless of whether there's I have more free time. And to be honest with you, I think I work kind of better when I have pressure on my shoulders.
Yeah,
If there's like a deadline, it's like, okay, we got to get cracking. Like I found with our last record, we put out the single before we'd finished the album, and it's like, okay, we're making a statement. This is happening. There's no
yeah,
turning back now. So it's like, all cylinders are firing, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
Whereas if everything's just open, it's like, oh, maybe I'll mess around with this synth for like 2 weeks, or
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
can, you can get lost in the stuff that just isn't important, I guess. And yeah, so yeah, to be honest with you, I'm writing way more now than I was in lockdown.
Oh,
So
that's good. Let's start your playlist. I want you to tell me, please, track one, the song that you regard as having the greatest ever intro, please.
uh, I had a big think about this, and I was like, well, there's so many amazing tunes with awesome intros, or intros that almost define genres. I was like, okay, Goldie, Inner City Life. I love that really expansive intro. Corn, Blind. It's like the sound of new metal.
Why has no one ever chose that? I've done
Really?
500 of these, and no one's ever chose "Blind" by Corn. And it basically was most people's introduction to new metal, right?
It literally starts with "Are you ready?" I mean, that's like the ultimate intro to anything. But yeah, so that, and I was like, I was like, oh, Frankie Knuckles and Jamie Principle, the kind of the arpeggiator sound, which is kind of also like a cool intro where it's like more like a siren rather than
Mm.
something that's long or expansive. Yeah, so yeah, Your Love. But then I was like, well, what about in my life? What was the kind of my introduction to music? And yeah, it's a boring answer, but I was just like, it's got to be Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit, because just I remember the time when I heard it. I remember exactly where I was, who I was with, and it was like a defining point for me in terms of like, I was like, okay, I'm into this music thing. This is what I'm into. And I remember the year I was, since you gave me all these questions. I was like trying to chronologically remember all this stuff in my head. And I was like, okay, it was either 92 or 93. I was 8 or 9. I was with my brother. We were in Games Workshop in Luton. We were big into like, nerdy painting model stuff. And one of the guys that worked there had long hair.
Of
And
course he did.
yeah.
Of course he did.
Yeah. I think he was more of a metaler than a grunge guy. But either way, he put on that track, and everyone started moshing in Games Workshop. It was the weirdest, funniest thing I've ever seen. And yeah, and I was just like, I went up to him and was like, what is this? And he told me what it was. And I was like, from that moment, I was like, I'm not into like painting models anymore, or doing that stuff. Like music is what I'm about.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember like asking my mom to buy me it because I was too embarrassed because it had like a naked baby on the front cover, you know. And yeah, it was just, yeah. And weirdly enough, my brother, who I was with at the time, he actually designs models for Games Workshop now. So he kind of stayed on that path, and then I kind of moved into the kind of the music thing. And yeah, so I have like that track to like thank for just, I think just the energy of it, you know. The production is also something that is just so it's just so immediate, and also kind of you can grasp it if you're young. I think when you're young, things that sound really well produced tend to be easier to approach.
I was lucky enough to have Butch Vig on the podcast, and he bizarrely didn't choose this for intro, and I had to question that. And he was saying that you know the first review he read of it, somebody described it that when Dave Grohl's drums kick in that intro, it felt like the house had just collapsed on top of them, and it is such a barrage of noise. And but on the production thing as well, from what I gather, if you know what you read and what you hear, is Kurt wasn't actually a fan of that kind of Butch Vig production, was he? He was more the Steve Albini kind of.
Yeah, like he wants a punk and wants a raw. But the thing that's amazing about that intro is that whenever you hear like a school band covering it and the drum fill comes in, it's like it just sounds pitiful, and it's something to do with the way, you know, the way that it was recorded. I don't know if they tracked the drums with like early sort of tracking using samples, but it just sounds, as you said, it sounds freaking huge.
Yeah.
And and I just remember hearing that fill kick in, and it was like, okay, my life's changed from this point.
And the thing is as well, if we talk about Nevermind as an album as well, it gets thrown into, you know, terminology like grunge and things like that. It's one of the most as an indie DJ in my club, I've been playing that record for 30 years, right? And maybe apart from Something in the Way, I can play any track from that album and it will go off still to this day with the next generation, because I think it's a perfect pop record. I think every track on Nevermind is pure pop. It's just loads of, obviously, quite loud, but the hooks and the choruses are just absolute pop gems.
Yeah, and I think to me, that's kind of why grunge is different to like punk and hardcore. I mean, I don't listen to that much Nirvana now, but to me, that record you're right, it's a pop record. It's great songwriting. It's kind of like more like good rock music as well, which is, you know, different from maybe what he was influenced by, which was just more about kind of trashy energy.
Yeah.
Whatever. So it's it's, you know, it's just textbook great songwriting. I mean, listening to it now, the one I really like is Territorial Pissings, just because that is like the hardcore track, or the punk track off the album.
Pure chaos.
Yeah. And the vocals are just, you know, awesome. At the end, it's like you can tell that he's feeling it. It's not forced.
In regards to yourself as a musician and songwriter, the way that people are consuming their music now and getting their music is probably different now to how it was when Friendly Fire started as a band. We're now seeing things like TikTok being used to market music, and I, you know, there's songs that I play that my children are singing. I'm like, how the hell do you know that? And they're like, oh, it's on TikTok. And obviously the desire to be on certain Spotify playlists, which has maybe replaced that desire to be on whatever radio station it was, you know, 10, 15 years ago. Tell me, has any of these kind of, because one of the things that with that kind of TikTok generation and the Spotify playlists, it feels that there's a lot of interest in, you've got to hook them quickly. And I know that maybe that's more with sort of mainstream pop, you know, which has almost become a sort of science in itself of creating this perfect 2-minute thing that is an earworm. And how much of any of the stuff that I've just mentioned has filtered through into your creative process, if at all?
I think not really that much. I think we naturally try and keep our music pretty immediate, but that has nothing to do with, I think, trying to be, you know, trying to fit into some kind of, or just to make it more marketable.
Sure.
Yeah, am I a fan of it? No. It's definitely not what I'm into. Yeah, I guess even like playlists feel really sort of sterile to me, compared, like, I grew up listening to compilations. And I mean, I'm gonna, some of the music that I discovered through compilations that we're going to be listening to later. And so it's like, I appreciate, things, the idea of like a playlist, but I think it's just the fact that it's this constant stream that things just get lost, and you're also not living with it. I don't know. I don't want to whine. I don't want to be one of those whiners, because it is what it is. But
it's a safe space to whine, Ed. It's all right.
But yeah, it's like, just, I guess it is what it is. I think for us, yeah, we're kind of lucky in the sense that we've always wanted to just write music that grabs you straight away. And yeah, I think, yeah, if we were, say, like a Foles band or whatever, it might be a bit different, where you're like, some of their biggest tunes have long intros. So
Yeah.
in that respect, it's probably might be a bit more of an issue. But for us, it's like we like to like kick in the drums and all the rhythm like straight away and just get it going, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Tell me about the first song you remember hearing, please, Ed, that had an emotional impact on you.
So yeah, I guess that, there are so many. There's music that your parents play you that's, I have like really fond memories of dancing with my dad to Stick Together by Brian Ferry. Just growing up listening to Michael Jackson, all of that stuff. But I think in terms of like a specific emotion that I feel like I've been trying to like capture in our music, which is, like that kind of sense of like euphoria, or that epicness, the kind of moment that makes you want to like hug your friends and just, like, I guess you hear in a lot of like rave and house and whatever, but I was too young to be into that music. So for me, it was Oasis Slide Away, just because it has, I guess it's like kind of shoegazy. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It has those lush melodies that are just, that aren't on every Oasis tune. I was like, the end of like Live Forever has that same kind of feel, which is, I don't know how to describe it, just melodies that feel really kind of like emo almost. Do you know what I
mean? That Slide Away, bizarrely, is my favourite Oasis track as well. And I do think that's the closest they get to shoegaze. I do think it's got that feel to it. And yeah, there's something about when that album come out, I was sort of 18. I just caught it at the right time, and it was super exciting. But for me, being a shoegaze fan, it was always Slide Away that I gravitated to straight away. It was like, yeah, this is the one that just feels, it's got, I don't know, it's got something different to it that the rest of that record hasn't got.
Yeah, I think it didn't have the kind of Beatlesy melodies that I just found a bit boring to my ears. I wanted like, that kind of dreaminess. And, it's like, I guess that was the kind of entry point for me to like Creation Records. And then you hear My Bloody Valentine, and you hear like Swerve Driver, and you hear all of that stuff. And then you're like, oh, that's the stuff that I'm really into.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have got there had it not been for, that track. And also like Oasis at Nebworth was my first gig. So that was
wow.
Yeah. So I was like, I was 12. The only reason I went was because I lived next to the site of where it was. Right. And they gave my family like 12 free tickets. So I was like the popular kid for a weekend. And and it was really intense. Yeah, really intense experience. Like just loads of pissed up lads. And, I couldn't get close to the stage. So all the kind of the screen visuals were totally out of sync with the music.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I don't know. It was weird. I kind of felt like maybe these aren't like my people. This isn't my crowd. I kind of knew from that early age. And I knew that I wanted to like, it sounds really pretentious or like snooty, but I wanted to like dig deeper and, find something that maybe related to me a bit more, I guess. I don't
think that's snooty. I think that's just a realization, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't want to be like, oh, I'm better than lad culture or whatever. But it was just, I guess it was just like something I just didn't gel with that vibe. I think I was a bit like a more shy person, and like I guess I mean I was 12, but I knew that wasn't going to and maybe being like a middle class kid as well, I felt like I couldn't quite relate to it in the way that I guess, if you're a working class lad and you hear Oasis, it's, I can totally get why that music is for you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I did hear an interesting thing that Noel Gallagher said recently about Nebworth and why it's revered so much. And, and he said the thing that I think made it so special was the fact that it was pre-mobile phone. And so that connection, there was nothing interfering. Everyone was like there. It was us, and the crowd. And there was no one texting. There was no one ringing their friends. There was no one filming it. And I thought, I'd never considered that. And and you just think, how, it's a given now when you're at shows that you presume that somebody at some point is going to stand in front of you with, with their phone, up above their head, filming something that you should be, I guess, maybe more directly engaged with. But, it's horses for courses. What's your stance on that?
I mean, you can't control what people want to do, really.
Sure.
You can't control how the audience are going to react. Like that recent Raw Blood thing. It's just really embarrassing. Like, I mean, I'm watching it from the sidelines, being like, oh god, it's just like, you just got to get up there and do your thing, and whether you're playing to tons of people or barely anyone, or whether they're enjoying it or not enjoying it, you play like you play. And maybe that ethos for me comes from getting into like punk and hardcore at a young age, where you're playing to like 5 people and you still got, you've traveled 5 hours or whatever just to like play the show. So you may as well put the effort in. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, I think, sort of, people are going to react how they react. So just get on with it.
Absolutely. You touched on dancing around the front room to Brian Ferry and stuff in your dad's record collection. Was growing up, was home musical?
Kind of, not really. I think, like my dad would have like the standards, I guess. He had like Fleetwood Mac, Roxy Music, we have Phil Collins. The kind of what I would consider just the standard records to have.
Yeah, the big hits of the day, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, but apart from that, it wasn't. We weren't. I think maybe that memory stuck out of dancing with my dad to that track because we didn't listen to that much music, maybe.
Right. Okay.
And when we did put that on, I was like, oh wow, we're actually having a good time here. Great, let's do this more often. Do you know?
Yeah. Where was home?
So home, St Albans. Yeah, growing up. So pretty much been in this part of neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Forever. I lived in London for a bit, but I guess I kind of had that idea of living in London. Hey, we're going to be meeting loads of like-minded people, and we're going to be writing music all the time, and it's just it just wasn't a reality for me, I guess. So it's like being back out here, being in nature. I can really like focus on the important stuff, like taking the dog for a walk, getting in the studio, and then just getting on with it. Really, I guess.
Yeah. It's really interesting what you just said then, and that's the whole reason why this podcast is called Off the Beat and Track. Just at the end of me road is he's a mate of mine who's a former musician called Scroobius Pip, and I used to have so many conversations with Pip, and we'd be out and about, and people would be like, "You live in Essex? Like, what? You don't live in London?" And he's like, "No, it's only 25 minutes on the train." Yeah, but why don't you live in London? And he's like, "Well, I quite like living in Essex." It was just that, but also when you sort of reach further afield than maybe St Albans and Essex and sort of peripheries of London, there is that desire for artists that live maybe further north or further down to move to London because that's where you get your shot. And and I find it really interesting. How people have different sort of takes on that. Did you move to London after the band were established?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, to be honest, I've kind of always felt like as a band, we were kind of, that sounds really lame, but outsiders in the sense of we didn't really like neatly fit into like any genre. I think we were kind of, okay, we're broadly indie, but we were kind of like pretty poppy. We were kind of really influenced by like house and disco. We started out playing like actual club nights. And then, we kind of, I never felt like we were really a band that could just move to say London and then be around all the indie bands and we'd all be like a cool collective together. It never felt like that for us. And we've always recorded most of our music ourselves. So it's like we've always been kind of insular in that sense. We've never needed to be near like a posh studio or anything. So yeah, it's yeah, I guess maybe in my mind I just had this, romantic idea that we would be part of some kind of collective, and which, I mean, I wish that was the case. I always get jealous when I see bands that are like, their mate is an amazing artist and they have like, they just all of these things perfectly together.
Yeah.
Whereas, we're from St. Albans. Like finding people that were just into the same stuff as us was hard enough. Do you know what I mean? Just finding people that were into the same music, let alone kind of being in a collective where, there was, so I kind of, in that sense, I've kind of felt like we were outsiders in a way.
But all them people that weren't outsiders, they all had their high fidelity moment in a really cool record shop. You had yours in Games Workshop. Right? There's the difference. It started early, I think.
well, weirdly enough, like, I mean, our live bass player, I met in HMV in St. Albans. He worked at HMV, and I bought a Board to Canada CD, and I went up and we just started chatting about Board to Canada. I was working at O'Neill's pub. He'd finished work and came, and I served him a beer, and then we just started chatting. And then from there, he's been our live bass player since we were 18 years old. So record shops as well,
Absolutely. Shout out HMV. That was the aforementioned Scroobius Pip. That was where he met Dan Lassac. They both worked in HMV in Lakeside.
Amazing. Yeah.
Right. I'm going to ask you now to tell me the song that reminds you of your time at school, please, Ed.
So, I was, thinking about this. I think, Ed, Jack and I, we've always been like pretty exploratory and like, I mean, we're always kind of competitive almost in a way where we wanted to like find something cool and then play it to our mates and be like, have you heard this? Have you heard that? And, I guess, and, trying to search for like our identity and find something that feels kind of unique to us. And I think we were kind of, we went through your obvious like new metal phase and went through like a kind of pop punk phase. And I think we were sort of trying to search for something a little deeper. And then Ed and I went over to visit one of our friends in just outside Washington, D.C. This was in 1999. I remember it because we spent 2000 at a really lame house party when no one was drinking. But anyway, so the good thing about that trip was that we went to a record shop called Smash Records in Georgetown. And it was like entering kind of like an Aladdin's cave for us. We were like 16 years old and it was just like, Discord Records, Black Flag, just all this kind of cool stuff, cool US punk and hardcore that was kind of harder to find. They had like a punk and hardcore section in Tower Records in Piccadilly, and maybe there was a punk hardcore shop that we just didn't know about that we were too young. But for us, it was just like, wow, there's so much cool music here. And one of those bands was on Discord Records, Fugazi, Minor Threat, and they were called Q and Not You. And that whole record just had, I guess it was coming out of like an art punk scene, but it had like that kind of dance element to it that felt super fresh for us. It was like, okay, girls can dance to this. This isn't like macho bro music.
Yeah.
And it felt like almost like the proto sound of what would become like DFA records and, the stuff later. It had that kind of dancey punk attitude like a couple of years before.
Sure. I'd never heard of them. And when you sent the list over, I went and had a listen. And the first thing that I could equate it to was kind of the really early at the drive-in stuff before One Arm Scissor and stuff like that. It was more along that kind. That was what I kind of got from it. I don't know if you can sort of hear that in it.
Yeah. I guess it was where hardcore was becoming a bit more arty and less macho.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
And, and like those kind of dueling guitars that just really capture your attention, like really angular sounding stuff. And but I guess with the Q and Not You stuff, they had like a disco beats on the album. They had like an open hi-hat, like there's sort of moments that are like, wow, this is kind of danceable and interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that really was like a kind of for us like a real early influence, definitely on the first record. And then you know, there are other bands that came out of that scene, especially in 2000, like the first Chick 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 record, but we're going to talk about in a bit,
Yeah.
where it was like, wow, this is what we're about.
Yeah.
And that you know, that sort of seemed to be the thing that we really wanted to focus on.
I just want to sort of touch on school a little bit. Was that something that you enjoyed, school?
Um, Not really. I guess, well, not. I didn't dislike it or like it. I think we kind of, I think we were really fortunate that we were kind of able to like find our clique pretty early on. Like in the first year, we were like, you know, maybe someone was wearing a Deftones t-shirt or something.
Yeah.
Like Jack was sort of into the kind of more kind of cooler end of stuff. Like he's really into Mogwai and Super Furries and but he was the drummer in school. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna become friends with you because we've got to write music together. We have like a desire to write music.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we just used to hang out in the music room and just listen to records. We had a really cool music teacher that was that would just let us bunk off going to assembly, and we just hang out there and you know, that was kind of, I think that was like the most important thing about school, really,
Yeah.
for us.
Did you know what you wanted to be?
Um uh no, probably not. I knew that I knew that I really loved music and I wanted to do music, but it definitely didn't seem like something that I'd want to admit to my parents or my teachers. Do you know what I mean? I think they would have just, especially going to like a, you know, like a private school, you know, they want you to do something proper with your life, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, you did in the end, didn't you? Right.
Well, yeah, but I still think, you know, my parents were like, well, I'll believe this is going somewhere when you start making some money out of it, I guess, rather than it just being, oh, the song gets played on the radio or whatever. It was like, I think they were like, oh, that's cool, congratulations, but are you going to be able to turn this into something?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I guess that's just maybe just coming from a, you know, like a background where, yeah, my parents, like, they're kind of like from a working class background, very hardworking, and everything is about, you know, a bit more money focused, I guess.
Sure.
Whereas, you know, I'm kind of, yeah, all of the kind of heroes that I'm into, I guess it's like it's about creating, you know, I sound really pretentious, but about creating good art and being able to like exist and do it rather
That's
than,
not pretentious.
well, you know, well, just being able to like, you know, like just being able to exist and get by, but do what you love is definitely,
Yeah.
no, that's the thing that I'm striving for, rather than you know, having loads of cool shit or whatever. I don't know.
If you can get by doing what makes you happy, you're winning 100%.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell me the first thing we were buying from a record store, please, Ed.
Okay, so yeah, we're kind of going back in time a little bit, and yeah, going back to compilations and how, yeah, it's just like a the earliest way for me to like discover music, apart from the radio, of course. But yeah, so I think it was buying Now That's What I Call Music compilations. Did you ever buy those? Or you're older than me, so you were probably like, that's lame. I'm never gonna.
Wait there 2 seconds. Ed, I'll keep this in my little recording room because this is the first record I ever owned.
Oh my goodness me! Amazing.
It's the first ever Now compilation.
Yes, I love it. Sorry for saying, you know. That's so cool.
But yeah, it absolutely changed my life. It was like, all of a sudden, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm of an age where most of them records that you said you was dancing to your dad to happened to be on the first record I bought. So I'm definitely a lot older. But yeah, I think sometimes they're sort of sneered upon a little bit, the Now compilations, and I can kind of understand why to a certain degree. But I also think you mentioned that Oasis were like a gateway for Swerve Driver and things like that. I think that the Now compilations are a gateway to a multitude of different artists.
100%. 100%. And I think, and also you get to live with the tracks, and there might be certain things on there where you start to appreciate the artistry a bit more. Just
Yeah,
because, it might be like a Eurythmic song on there or wherever, where it's like, if you're young, you're like, oh, I don't like electro sounding music. And then you start to like, you just listen to it more because it's on a cassette or wherever. You have to listen to it. And
yeah,
you're like, oh, actually, this track's really growing on me or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So yeah, for me, it was now 29. I'm trying to think what else was on there. It was like Wet, 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 or whatever. It was like classic 90s, textbook
yeah,
90s, 1994. And so I heard, Weezer, Buddy Holly, and I was like, I need to get this track. I just something, but it was just like super. I don't know what would you say, kind of like catchy, like 50s sounding punk or whatever. I don't know.
yeah,
It was, it was just appealed to me, I guess. It had that kind of saccharine, sugary
yeah,
energy, but like kind of gnarly sounding guitars.
yeah,
And so yeah, I went to Classical Rock in Harpenden, which is a record shop that I bought my first Swerve Driver record from as well. But yes, I wanted to buy Buddy Holly, but they had Say It Ain't So. That was the only one they had. And so I just took that home and I was like, this is really cool. This song is
yeah,
like just as good as Buddy Holly.
yeah. That's a happy accident. It's a cracker,
Yeah.
saying so, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, yeah. And like it's it's also kind of the record that my dad likes the most as well. So we kind of, I don't know why my dad really loves that first Weezer album. It's just like his favorite record. Every time I get in a car with him, he's just like always got it on or has it somewhere like stashed away. And and I think it was just this, once again, like a real gateway album for me, getting into like, probably from there I would have got into like Green Day or something.
Yeah.
And so big ups. Now that's what I call music compilations. So because I wouldn't have heard that tune otherwise.
Sure. Tell me about a young Ed hearing that first Weezer record, which is sort of soaked in pop melodies and that, and then what did you make of it when you were Pinkerton?
I think initially I didn't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I just didn't think the songs were as good.
Yeah.
Now I can appreciate it a lot more.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it was. Yeah, I think I haven't really listened to it properly in a while, but I listened to it about half a year ago, just randomly out of the blue, which is not. I just wouldn't really listen to it like Weezer now, but I was just like, what? Like, for some reason, it came to my head, and I was like, this is way better than I remember it being.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. What's your relationship like with the record shop now? I mean, I often speak to artists that if they're out on tour, they go to a new town, they will hunt out the the local record store and get lost in there for half an hour. Are you that kind of person?
100%. I'll like if we go on holiday, I'll drag my missus to like every record shop, or I'll say go and get a coffee because I'm gonna like see what I can find.
Yeah.
I think I've always been like a real nerd. Like some of my closest friends work in record shops. Like at my birthday the other day, Nick from Phonica came down, and like I think it's so important when you meet people like it's so important that there are people that work at record shops that have the right attitude, that is inclusive, and that have this desire to kind of to share their knowledge with you.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows what it's like to go into a record shop when there's just some miserable old geezer that just doesn't, that's just frowning at you. But it's amazing when you go somewhere and someone's really welcoming, and they ask you, hey, what are you into? Hey, check this out. And they give you like 5 records or whatever. And I've been really fortunate that I've met those people along the way. So Nick from Phonica, when I was at university in Nottingham, one of my first friends I made was Chris, who works at Reckless in Soho now. And he was just one of the people that would be like, hey man, how you doing? Check this out. And then I'd see him at a show later that week, and he'd be like, hey, come and hang out. So it's, the record shop is really important for me. It's how I discover music still.
Yeah. Let's go clubbing. Track 5. The song that soundtracked your year's clubbing, please, Ed.
So yeah, I guess most of the clubbing I would have done would have been in that kind of, university period, I guess.
Where was
And
uni?
so uni for me was Nottingham Trent, and it was a good time to be in Nottingham. It was stealth rescue rooms. It was that real kind of crossover point between house and techno and minimal and your classic indie disco. And I
Yeah,
guess stealth and rescue rooms, I mean, stealth was quite literally above rescue rooms. So you were able to like switch between the two. And yeah, they're kind of, as you know, there was like DFA Records was really big at the time. Their banger stuff was really big at the time. And yeah, for me, it was that first chick, or the second Chick 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 record, but especially that track, Me and Giuliani, just because it kind of, for me, it just felt like it understood dance music a little bit better. It was like really acidy, really like sounded great on pills. It was just like it reminds me of like discovering that whole side of listening to music as well, which is, it's not something I do that often now.
yeah,
But at the time, kind of taking pills and acid and then listening to certain music was really like revelatory and probably
yeah,
really like inspiring for writing music as well. Maybe not, just in terms of the feelings that you get when
yeah,
you're listening to music in that state. And yeah, I think that track just, it sort of morphs through all these kind of different phases, and it's kind of, yes, it's a total trip, but super danceable, works in a kind of club environment, and it also works in a kind of more of an indie kind of environment.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think that's, yeah, to me, that's like the gold standard for that sound. And it's definitely what we kind of try and keep it in our minds when we're writing our stuff.
It was a really like huge crossover moment, wasn't it? Like I think, all of the, you mentioned Ed Banger and Kitsune as well. Like
Mm.
all of them labels were, within months remixing the biggest indie bands, and then all of a sudden, them indie bands had, way more danceable tracks for the clubs and things like that. It was obviously a huge melting pot. But I want to sort of touch on something that you said about that track. And you said, oh, there's acidy bits in it. Like, had you was you already aware of what had happened 20 years previously musically, with acid house and that sort of era of electronic music, or was it discovering them bands around that point that sort of pushed you to go back and explore, the kind of roots of that?
Oh, it was definitely, yeah, working our way back. I think our introduction into like dance floor, well, house music or techno was really when minimal house was massive. So it was Ricardo Villalobos, it was like Ghostly Records, all of that stuff. And so yeah, I had to work my way back, like with
Yeah,
most things, and I had to discover just like early Detroit music. And then listening to kind of, Frankie Knuckles and Jamie Principle, Your Love, which we actually covered on our first ever single. It was like, okay, this I'm like understanding the lineage of where this all kind of comes from.
yeah,
And I think that's really important.
yeah,
I think, it's important to, if you're going to be inspired by something, just learn about the history of it rather than just hearing a cool track and then taking something from it and using it. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
absolutely.
And that's an entirely different like conversation. But yeah, it was a real kind of period of like discovery and
Yeah,
just, kind of our introduction to like, yeah, that house and techno stuff and working our way back, but also seeing bands kind of incorporating it into their sound.
yeah. I'm going to take you home for track 6 and ask you to tell me a favourite song from an artist from your home county, please, Ed.
So yeah, I was thinking about this. I listened to the interview you did with Enter Shikari, and I was
With Rao or with
the drummer, I think.
drummer, right? Yeah,
Yeah. And yeah, and it was that's one thing. There's definitely like a real hardcore scene within kind of Watford and St Albans, and there's then obviously I think you mentioned the Zombies, which were kind of, I guess, iconic St Albans band. But there's also like an amazing like electronic scene from St Albans. So there's like Photech, He's a legendary drum and bass producer.
Was
So,
Photech from St Albans?
yeah, it's from St Albans. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, so Photex St Albans, Source Direct. Then obviously in Watford, you have all the kind of LTJ Bookham, good looking record stuff. You have Moving Shadow from Stevenage. It's like, there's so much amazing jungle and electronic stuff literally just surrounding us. Well,
Yeah.
I think it was a different landscape, but it's amazing I can kind of hear the kind of Hertfordshire vibe within the music. I know that sounds,
Really?
yeah, there's something about it that just sounds like, it's hard to describe. There's just a feeling about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's, so much of that music is so euphoric and so nostalgic. Like if I listen to some, LTJ Bookham stuff now, I'm like, it almost brings tears to my eyes, even though I kind of, I didn't really live through that period.
Yeah.
But yeah, but anyway, so the artist that I'm going to mention is a lot closer to us. And yeah, he's a musician called Chris Clark, or he's now called Clark. But he was, to me, I've always sort of seen him as like a mentor. He was like the first guy from St Albans that we knew that signed to Warp Records. That was like the coolest label to us growing up. And he was writing this weird kind of bleepy bloopy music on his laptop, but like traveling the world and playing, just his music that he'd written on his laptop was taking him around the world. And I was just like, I want to do that. I have to find a way to do that. And he was just, at school we had a Logic. It was eMagic Logic Gold 5, like one of the very early versions of Logic. And I just start writing and jamming on that, and then sending him tracks, and he'd write me like page-long replies saying, "Oh, do this, try this." And then so I ended up meeting Chris eventually. He was always playing down at the Horn, which is the local pub in St Albans.
The legendary pub, right?
Yeah, legendary pub. Like I met Bono once, and even he remembered. He was like, "Oh, you're from St Albans? Yeah, we played the it used to be called the Horn of Plenty before the Horn Reborn." Yeah. And yeah, so yeah, it's a legendary venue. But yeah, and so Chris would be playing down there, and yeah, he kind of, I guess he was just always really supportive, really inspirational. And then he's actually just put out a new record, which I should probably plug, with Tom York from Radiohead. So he's obviously got big admirers of his music. Tom York, I think, is singing on his album. And so it was just like, he's always really sort of friendly and engaged. Like I just was messaging him this morning, and he was like, he's asking me about vocal warm-up techniques. So it's kind of cool to like have a hero that I now kind of consider like a friend, I guess.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And he gave us like our first sample CD, which is our first record, is basically based around these samples that he gave us. So yeah, it's got to be Chris Clark, and the track is called Rob Lee. This is going to get confusing because Rob Lee is actually the bass player of our band. Yeah. So Chris Clark named this song after the bass player, the one that I met in HMV. So yeah.
And I think if you search it, he's under just Clark, I believe.
It is under Clark. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Last track, and this is when you get to play Tastemaker. Tell me a song that you think many people may not know that you would like them to hear, please.
So yeah, over the kind of lockdown period, I just did this just because I was bored, and also I feel like I've never been very good at like connecting with our fans. I just started doing like half an hour in the morning from 7:30 till 8, just playing music, just to our mega fans basically, and just chatting over the music so I wouldn't have any copyright issues. But the music that I couldn't really play was hip hop, because I was just chatting over. I'd be chatting over all the lyrics.
Yeah.
And so yeah, my last choice is Big L, Freestyle 98. And this just takes me back to kind of skateboarding in St Albans, going to the Pioneer Club. And, it's just, it was a different time for hip hop. To me, it's like, when I listen to it now, I'm like, this is like jazz music. It's just so lyrical. It's just really beautiful, but also really, aggressive and gnarly.
Yeah.
And I guess Big L was like one of those rappers that maybe just, I guess, unfortunately he got shot before he was able to like really take his career to the next level. But he's kind of, you kind of got to dig a little bit more deeper to find his stuff. But yes, so Big L, Freestyle 98. That's one.
we just before we start to sort of wrap it up, Ed, you just touched on. I didn't realise that skateboarding was a part of your life. Then tell me about how important skateboarding was, because whenever musicians reference skating, and it was a big thing for me growing up. It maybe kind of before your time. For me, it was skate videos was where I heard new music. That was where I heard exciting American bands. Was on skateboarding videos.
For me also.
It was
100%. I was big into snowboarding and skating, and where I heard Oasis Slide Away was actually on a snowboard video called Odd Man Out, which is directed by a guy called Christian Stevenson. I pronounced his name wrong. Who I now know, but it's everything like skate. Like I can remember, like I don't know if maybe this is a bit later, but for you, but like The End, Birdhouse had such an iconic soundtrack.
Yeah.
Can you? I don't know. Did you ever watch that one?
No, I didn't. No.
They're a bit too late. But I don't know. So for you, was it like kind of more what period are we talking about?
I would have been skating in probably 1991,
Okay.
and so I was discovering a lot of sort of like grunge stuff. Like I remember sort of hearing like Mudhoney for the first time on sort of skate videos, even sort of stuff like sort of Fishbone and then kind of the sort of offshoots of your sort of Faith No More, you like Mr. Bungle and things like that. It was just like, what's this? And you can Shazam it, you'd have to sort of wait until someone or on the credits it'd be like whatever, it'd flag up what this track was, and it was like that was such an important thing, and fashion as well, and it's so weird when you look at the biggest, most expensive brands now that people are wearing on the streets were literally all, what we wore then, like, which was totally affordable, and
100%. I remember being like obsessed with like Etnies footwear. You'd be obsessed with skate shoes, and you'd be like, oh, it's just like the Eric Coston Etnies or whatever. That was like just like a huge part of my life. I guess that for me at that time it would have been DJ Shadow Introducing. That was the skate album for me and my mates. And then kind of like Gravediggers and that kind of horrorcore hip hop thing. There's something about, like, I know it's slightly different for older generations, but for my generation, that kind of trip hoppy hip hop thing just goes so well with skateboarding. I don't know why. It just feels so smooth.
Absolutely. Ed, we put together a little Spotify playlist to accompany the podcast with all of the tracks that you've spoken about today, and obviously we'll put some of your music on, and with that in mind, what's happening musically? Tell me what's coming up, what's going on.
So we're doing the kind of 15th anniversary of the first record. We're doing some shows. We might have a little surprise that we'll do at the shows. I don't know. We're still undecided. Well, actually, no. We said we are going to do it yesterday, so maybe we'll have a special surprise for the old school fans that are going to come and check out the show. And we're working on stuff, and it's going really nicely. And who knows? The fans might hear it sooner rather than later.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. And if people want to keep up to speed with everything you're doing, where's the best place to stay up to speed?
Probably just on our Instagram, Friendly Fire's Instagram. We're in the process of redoing our website so we can just get all of our merch and all of our stuff a bit more worldwide. I'm kind of finding that I'm just caring more about that stuff now. Just like searching out screen printers. Like there's a young screen printer guy near me, and it's great just being able to like care more about that stuff. And then hopefully we can make it an easier process for the fans to just buy stuff straight away, and we can get that rolling.
Wonderful. Well, if it's all right with you, we'll tag you and everything when this comes out, and wish you all the best with the gigs and the music. And just want to say I've had a lovely time chatting, Ed. Thank you so much, mate.
Oh, thanks so much, Stu. Yeah, cheers. And it's amazing that now record is you still got it. That's so cool. I love that, man.
I'm going to press stop. Don't go anywhere.